Sure. All right. I want to read you a story that I know you've heard before, especially on Thanksgiving. You've probably heard it many times. But we've got to make sure that we're getting the understanding of what's going on in this story and how this story represents life at large. It's found in Luke. It says, now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. When he saw them, he said, go show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to them, rise and go. Your faith has made you well. I know you guys have heard, if you've been in church many years, you've heard more than one story about lepers in the Bible. And the whole leprosy thing is a very key symbol to God. It's a legitimate disease, but it represented so much more than just the physical. In the physical, it's a disease that was much more prominent, you would think, in that day, because we mirror it against our culture. And believe it or not, it's not unheard of in America. It's just very rare. But in other countries, it's still very common. India is a nation where it's very common. Several of the African countries, it's common. Even in some of the South American countries. It's not called leprosy anymore. It's called Hansen's disease, because that's the scientists who really got to the bottom of what leprosy was all about. There's a lot of things misunderstood about leprosy, especially in the days of Jesus. Leprosy is a bacteria that attacks the skin and the nervous system directly under the layers of skin, and it causes just terrible sores, and the flesh will appear to just literally be rotting off the bone. I know you guys have seen pictures probably of lepers, and their fingers or their toes may be missing. And the misnomer is that they rotted and fell off onto the ground, and that's not what happens at all. What happens with leprosy is that it attacks the nervous system where you can't feel anything in your fingers or your toes anymore. And so it's common for people with leprosy to bang their toes or their fingers against something to cut them and never know anything about it. And what happens is secondary infections will set in. And as crazy as it sounds, what happens in a finger and a toe, it literally can withdraw into the human body. They don't literally fall off. You'll notice if you see pictures of leprosy where it looks like there's a finger or a toe missing, or hands with all the fingers missing, it looks like they may have just fell off, but there's just little nubs there, and they literally just retract into the body. It's the craziest thing in the world. Leprosy is not, come to find out, as easily spread as what it was thought in the days of Jesus. It is spread through body fluids, mucus, coughing, sneezing, through saliva. And it's a very scary disease, very scary. Today, it's very, very treatable today. The problem is, in Jesus' day, along with today in places like India, nutrition is a huge factor, and the immune system and what's going on there is a huge factor. In Jesus' day, it was a pretty serious condition. They didn't understand how it spread, so they just assumed it could be spread through touching or anything else. And so lepers then, as well as today, they are sent to leper colonies, whole communities where lepers live, and they try to fend for themselves, and people will tend to drop off food and provisions for them, but from a distance. And in Jesus' day, everything was from a distance. And the lepers were abandoned into leper colonies where they had to try to survive somehow. And everybody knew where the leper communities were, and if they were traveling, they steered clear. And if a leper was out traveling and just happened to come upon somebody, it was by law. They had to begin to notify those people, unclean, unclean. And that person knew to stay away because they might catch leprosy. Spiritually speaking, God gives us that condition to help us understand the human condition. Leprosy speaks of the human soul infested with sin that attacks the inner parts of who we are and makes us unclean. And that was what was so amazing about Jesus in more than one story when he was approached by a leper, and the leper announcing, "I'm unclean, don't come close to me." In fact, he did come close to them. And in fact, there are stories in the Bible where he laid his hands on them. Unheard of, but showing the very nature of God, that he's not afraid to put his hands on the vilest of sinners, the most unclean people. Jesus comes into proximity of 10 lepers. We understand that at least this one leper is not only a leper, it's almost a double jeopardy kind of scenario here. He's also a Samaritan, not one who should really have great faith and confidence in the Messiah. And yet these people clearly, these lepers, knew who Jesus was, and they call him by name. "Master, Jesus, please have mercy on us." And Jesus, because it's his nature, he does have mercy on them. And in this story, he doesn't lay hands on them. He doesn't declare healing over them. He tells them, "Go show yourself to the priest," because if somebody was thought to have leprosy and suddenly they find out, oh, it's something else, they don't have leprosy, or in fact, there could be people with leprosy that maybe caught it from somebody else, but because they had the right nutrition and maybe they could afford a doctor with the right salves, the leprosy was treated, and now they no longer appear to have leprosy. Well, they've already been branded a leper, and so they had to go to the temple, to the priest, and only the priest could officially declare that you are now clean and could re-enter your normal community way of living. And so when Jesus said, "Go show yourself to the priest," he was saying, go show yourself to the priest, and the priest will declare that you are no longer unclean, and you can re-enter into life. They clearly had heard stories about Jesus, or they would have never been crying out to him to begin with. And so when he said, "Go show yourself to the priest," there's no evidence that anything had happened in that moment, but they had the confidence to believe that something was going to happen because they left and they went to show themselves to the priest. And the Bible says that on their way, their leprosy was cured. They were healed. And of course, as the story goes, 10 were healed and only one returned to tell Jesus, "Thank you. Thank you for healing me. Thank you for taking my unclean body and making me clean." Looking at the picture deeper, thank you for taking my unclean soul and making me clean. Jesus said, "Wasn't there 10 of you? Only one returns to say thank you." This story is very interesting because it just so happens that studies have kind of proven that this percentage is reasonably accurate in life. That when we look at life, you can divide life into many categories, but two of the categories you can divide people into is what I'm calling this morning thinkers and takers. There are people in life who are just by nature very grateful. They're grateful for life. They get up every day. They're grateful for a new sunrise. They're grateful for a warm cup of coffee. They're grateful to have a job. They're grateful for their family. They're grateful for their home that they live in. They're grateful that they can walk and they can talk and they can see and they can eat and they can process their foods. And they're just grateful people. And every time you do anything at all, even the smallest things for them, they clearly are so grateful. We love those kind of people, don't we? We're drawn to those kind of people. The thinkers in life. To make very clear, since we are in the Appalachian Mountains, when I say thinkers, I'm not talking about those who think. I'm talking about those who think. And then there's the takers in this world. And we're all familiar with that category of people also. The takers. And we look at this ratio here and we see 10% of these men were thinkers and 90% of them were takers. And lo and behold, we have a slice of life, a picture of true life. That's probably about right. About 10% of people, and we will say in America, because that's what we're truly we're used to. We can understand. We live in it. Probably 10% of the people we know in life are just truly grateful people. Just so thankful for everything. And probably 90% of the people we know on different levels, maybe not to all of them to extremes, hopefully anyway, but probably 90% are just takers, and they're driven in life every day by what they can take without giving a lot of thought for what they should already be thankful for. The takers are very self-focused people. They always put their needs above everybody else's needs. I happen to have a position in life where I get a front row seat to that. And I get to know people who are very, very self-focused, and everything in their world just implodes into their own needs. They're never the ones who volunteer when you say we need new nursery workers, we need more people in children's ministry, we're having a work day this week at church, and we need at least a dozen people to show up and do this. They're never the people that do that. When we say there's been a need in a family and we need some people to fix some food, they're never the people that show up to do those things. But they always show up when the light bill needs to be paid. They always show up when they have a need. And I've noticed that their expectations on others are very, very unfair, because they're so indrawn to their own needs that they walk through life assuming that everybody sees their needs, everybody should be compassionately moved by their needs, and everybody should be responding to their needs. And when everybody doesn't do that, they become very, very offended, and they get their feelings hurt a lot and feel like, well, I guess nobody loves me. But they don't seem to notice that they never respond to other people's needs. The thinkers are much different. While the takers are always coming to take and see what's in it for them, the thinkers tend to be the people who always put other people's needs above themselves. They contribute to society. It's a sad testimony, but I've heard many conversations and even seen articles written about the takers in life, and how that if the takers were to suddenly disappear from culture and from a society, it would not break the society down on any level, because they're not the contributors to society. It's one of the things that we fear right now in America, the way that America is going, because America is very intentionally right now, for very personal reasons in the political world, is driving people intentionally to become more takers and less thinkers. Never reminding America at large what we have to be grateful for, which is so much, but always pointing out the lack and where someone's dropping the ball and where we're being treated unfair, trying to magnify that thing that drives the human nature, the bad human nature, that makes us all about ourselves. What's in it for me? It's a precarious time in our culture right now, as we see a nation making intentional decisions whether to be thinkers or takers. Studies have shown that these people that I call thinkers and takers are simply the grateful and the ungrateful. People who are grateful are always noticing what there is to be grateful for in life, where ungrateful people never see anything except for what they don't have that they want. The grateful versus the ungrateful. I'm always reading to you the reports of the studies that are done, the psychological studies on the grateful and the ungrateful, and the pros and the cons, the positives, the negatives. But I always try to stay up to date to make sure that I'm not just using old information. But sadly, the information never changes. I was reading a report this week that is one of the most current ones I could find, that in fact took a compilation of many studies and brought them together to try to prove conclusively this is just the way life is, and you will not be an exception to it. It listed the qualities of a grateful person through many, many studies where they find it just really never varies from this. This is just the way it is. The qualities of a grateful person. A grateful person is happy most of the time. We know you can't be happy all the time. It's just not even normal. If you're happy all the time, you've got good drugs, is all I can say. A grateful person, though, is happy most of the time. A grateful person makes the most of what he or she has and accepts that there are imperfections in life, but it's not going to keep me from being happy. A grateful person has a very different perspective on life. A grateful person says, thank you for even the simplest of things. A grateful person looks at what he or she has, and they really take the time to appreciate it, whatever it is. A grateful person is well aware that their lives don't have to be perfect for them to feel good. A grateful person is positive most of the time. A grateful person has more friends. This has been proven by many, many studies. A grateful person generally has fewer health issues because the more grateful and happy you are, your mind and body are in better shape, and your energy level will be higher. And I dug deeper into that and began to explore how that an ungrateful attitude is linked to a negative attitude, which is linked directly to different kinds of weird chemicals that are dispersed through the human body and how they affect our health. And they have noticed that grateful people generally are healthier people. A grateful person is most likely to have a more successful career. Sounds like it's pretty good to be a grateful person, huh? That's just one little page and one little short list of the qualities of a grateful person. The qualities of ungrateful people are broader. Maybe that's good so we can see where we fit into it. Knowing that there's different levels of being grateful and different levels of ungrateful. Most of us here are a hodgepodge of the two. An ungrateful person always looks at what is wrong with their life. They always look at what's wrong. There can be 99 good things and one wrong thing. An ungrateful person will focus on the thing that is not right about their life. An ungrateful person complains incessantly about their job, the weather, where they live, and whatever. They complain incessantly about it. And we see the many stories in the Bible that focuses on ungrateful people, and they're always presented as the grumblers, the murmurers in life. And you see all the way back to the story that we kind of touched on last week concerning Korah in the day of Moses. And Korah was a very ungrateful person. And Korah incited grumbling and murmuring among the people. And what happened was God opened up the earth, and the earth literally swallowed Korah and his followers of grumblers. And it was supposed to be, though that was a literal thing that happened, it was God trying to show us, here's what's going to happen if you are ungrateful and you just become a grumbler and a murmurer in life. Life is just going to open up and swallow you. An ungrateful person can never be happy because they're always bitter and negative. And these kinds of people are more likely to put other people down. How many have ever known anyone that always putting somebody else down. See, there are many, many classifications of human problem that we can talk about today. What I'm wanting you to see is that all of these tend to flow out of one primary problem. People have ungrateful hearts, and it ripples into all kinds of things where we say, well, he's got that problem, and she's got that problem, and he's like that, and she's like that. And what you find is there's always a story behind that story, and it seems to primarily flow out of a grateful or an ungrateful heart. An ungrateful person is more likely to suffer illness because their negative attitude will break down their body. This breakdown will cause their immune system to literally weaken. An ungrateful heart, studies show, literally becomes poison inside of a person's body. An ungrateful person will attract ungrateful people to them. This has been proven by the famous law of attraction, birds of a feather. So you'll notice that complainers and whiners, it's like a magnet to other complainers and whiners, and then they get in little groups and they complain and they whine, and that's all they do. An ungrateful person always believes that they never get things to work out for them. These kinds of people are set up to fail from the very beginning if they ever even try to accomplish a goal, because they will instantly start focusing on the things that are not falling into place, and they'll start complaining about it, and one thing leads to another. An ungrateful person thinks and believes that they are never good enough, so they usually have low self-esteem. They never see themselves in a positive way because they don't see others in a positive way. An ungrateful person blames other people for their unhappiness. You'd be shocked at how people have artistically figured out how to link their unhappiness back to their pastor. You'd be shocked. I just sit blown away all the time when I listen to people and they begin to spill the beans of how they're feeling in life, and then we begin to have conversation trying to figure out why they feel that way. And it's one thing I can tell you for sure, it's never that person's fault. Never. It never has anything to do with their choices in life. It never has anything to do with their attitudes in life. Trust me, it's all other people that is just messing their life up so bad. You know I'm being sarcastic, right? Because some of y'all were dead silent, like, oh, well, that confirms a lot, because that's how I've always felt about it. An ungrateful person feels like a victim every time they go through something or something goes wrong in their life. They really do believe the world is out to get them. An ungrateful person will have anger problems because they will try to convince other people that they are right and everyone else is wrong. An ungrateful person never sees the positive side of things and chooses to look at the negative aspects of every situation. And ungrateful people tend to get very defensive. How many different things did we just read there that are things that we could pull into the counseling chambers, teach a seminar, or preach a sermon on? How many different negative things about the human condition did we just read there? And how overwhelming it would be to take a group of people and try to break those things down into all those individual departments and try to minister healing to all those individual areas. How overwhelming is that? When even secular studies have said we just need to make one adjustment here and we're going to fix about 100 serious things. We got to figure out how to make people more grateful in life. More grateful. The thinkers and the takers. It's the grateful and the ungrateful. Jesus said this in Acts 20:35. It's a great time to use this going into Christmas for those who were thinking about what to buy their pastor for Christmas. In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words that the Lord Jesus himself said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." And this is an interesting thing. Paul is saying this, and he's talking about how they're pouring themselves out in ministry to different regions. And how those who are following, we're not even sure who was with him in these travels, but they were really expending themselves. They were traveling. They were absorbing the cost. It was probably taking a toll on their energy, maybe even on their bodies, and they were missing their families. And he was encouraging them that, it's okay. Be grateful for these opportunities that God has given us. Because he says, remember what Jesus said, and this is where it's an unusual passage. There's no record in the four Gospels of Jesus saying this, and yet the Gospels also say that if everything was recorded that Jesus said and did, it would just take an exhaustive library to contain all that information. And this is one of the things that was heard and had been handed down, that Jesus said it's more blessed, it's more of a blessing in life to be a giver than just a taker. The givers and the takers. Oh, to know this and understand this carnal knowledge, and yet the struggle to make this decision, especially when being a thinker or taker is so ingrained in many years of history of who we have been. But it's a primary subject that the Bible deals with, and it deals with it in a way that brings us back to the same place, that this is still one of the choices that God gave us. To be a thinker or a taker, to be one who gives in life because you're so grateful, or to only take because you're so ungrateful. I am no different than you. It's part of the human condition that we were all in this thing for ourselves, and that everything is about us. We know it's not healthy. We know it's not good. We know it's not attractive. But it's a daily battle to not be that way. I don't know about you, but I have noticed in my life that I seem to only stay in a place of gratefulness as a lifestyle when it is something that has happened to me or is happening to me where there's a daily reminder. When I was losing my vision because of the shingles in my right eye, there's not been a day, since then that I have not awakened, that I have not thanked God because I opened my eyes and I could see, because I opened my eyes too many days in a row that I could not see. I make jokes about it, and people give a little nervous chuckle, but if you're, maybe if you're young and you're a teenager in here and you can't really relate to some of this stuff, but if you get older and you see your body changes, or you've been through something, or you've been on medications or something, I've told you, it's like nobody thinks about being grateful that they can poop until they can't poop. Should I ask for a show of hands that can relate to what I just said, or you say, that's never happened to me. My poop don't even stink. There's a great joke I could tell you about how the body decided who was going to be the boss, but I can't tell it in here because kids would take it and run with it in a different direction. But it's a really good joke, and there's a really life story in it that everybody needs to hear. You can think you got all kinds of problems in life, all these things you need in life, all these things that are troubling you. And I'm telling you, baby, you wake up one day and suddenly you can't pee, and watch how everything is adjusted in you and what you think is important. Because you will think, if I could just start peeing again, everything else in life would be okay. Now, I haven't been in that situation before, but I sure have had a lot of close friends in that situation, and I have watched how that can just overtake life, along with an endless list of many other things that can go wrong in our body. We never stop to think that we can hear the sweetness of life until something happens when we can't hear, and it's like, boy, if I could just hear again, I'd be so grateful for that, and nothing else would matter. Our health is so important to us. Our relationships are so important to us. And I've watched as families just go through pure hell when their relationships and their family and marriages and with their kids are falling apart. And they've sat across from my table hundreds of times through the years, and I see as a family relationship is falling apart, how that it takes over life, and people are all feeling the same. If this relationship could just get healed, I'd never complain about anything else the rest of my life. Because it is so true. We don't realize what we have until we lose it. And that's why when we were praying as the praise team in my office this morning, my Thanksgiving just began to revolve around you guys, this church, this house, because this is just another one of the many things in life that we just take for granted. But then you stop and you think about, but what if this wasn't here? We, a people who was not a people, a bunch of outcasts from other places that didn't fit into anybody else's box. And God draws us here, makes us a family here, and we still don't fit into anybody else's box. And it's an environment that's not intimidating, that is supportive, and that just people that love each other despite their many failures. And you think about, what would my life be like if I didn't have this? It would be debilitating. I take my marriage for granted, and I take my kid for granted, and I take my home for granted, and I take electricity for granted, and having heat, and it's just the way we are. And it's sure not like we have to stay in this place of this grovel mode all the time and on our face just constantly, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. We've got to live. We've got to be focused on other things. Of course we do. But the attitude of gratitude is something that it's not about always being conscious. Oh, and thank you for that heat, Richard. Oh, thank you for that monitor. That's not what I'm talking about. That's just ridiculous. It's just having an attitude of gratitude where we're just always in this awareness of all the wonderful blessings in life. The many blessings. Gratitude, the intentional practice of gratitude, the intentional actions of being thankful for things in our life is very important to our spiritual development. When you are grateful, it nails your flesh to a cross because flesh is not grateful. When you're grateful, it pulls the Christ that's in you out of the grave. It kills you and it resurrects him. That's the power of gratitude. And you can do natural studies or you can do theological studies. And I will tell you, there is no one single thing that nails flesh to the cross faster than gratitude and brings Christ out of your grave to live through you faster than that same gratitude. So I was reading a story this week, and I was thinking about what I call our praying thinking ratio. Have you ever noticed when you have an issue in life that's very important and you're getting everyone you know to pray with you about it, and you're getting on 25 prayer chains, and it's permeating your Facebook wall? Because I've noticed a lot of people never post anything on Facebook except for their needs. They're very very indrawn people. There's other people that post all kinds of encouraging things all the time. But I've noticed that our praying thinking ratio is not very well balanced. I've noticed it because I've been in church for many, many years, most of my life. I've noticed that when there are issues in our life, just the incessant need for prayer and to move the hand of God and storm the throne and get everybody involved. There's got to be an answer here. Come on, God, hear me. And we'll expend hours and all kinds of energy and just hours of conversation everywhere we go. If anyone ever says, how you doing? And it's just like, let me tell you how I'm doing. It's just like all this conversation and just all this thought and everything revolving around, I need this to get fixed. And then it changes and God fixes something or he heals something or it just runs its course. And I've noticed that our thinking ratio does not match up with our praying ratio. We can pray hours and hours for God to do something, and then God does something, and we don't think hours and hours. We don't show gratitude for hours and hours. And I'm thinking, I can relate to that. I'm just like everybody else. But I need to be conscious of that. I need to be conscious of that. The Bible takes these thinkers and takers and talks about them in different ways, the grateful, the ungrateful. Talks a lot about the takers in life. Solomon spoke a lot about the takers in life. He called them the greedy people in life. Greedy people are just the takers. Greedy people are ungrateful people. And as you can see in America right now, there's a lot of ungrateful people. A lot of ungrateful people. Our political lines in America right now are literally being drawn literally based on grateful and ungrateful. People who want more and more, and I deserve this, and you should give me this, and I shouldn't have to work for that, and you should just pay for that. It's me, 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 me. And then a whole other category of people that says, yeah, no, I literally don't deserve anything. Whatever I get in life, it's a gift. It's a blessing. And I recognize I should work hard in life, and I should have to pay for whatever I get in life. That's just how God made it. We've never seen a time in history where a nation is so divided by this one thing. Solomon talked so much about the takers in life and the greedy people in life and the ripple effect in their life, and everything he said just matched right up with everything studies show today. But I was thinking of a old Nigerian folk tale this week in lieu of this and how it represents the heart of men. And it's a simple little tale. It's kind of predictable, but yet it's so representative of life. It's a story of three young Nigerian men that they were walking down a road one day, and they noticed something in a ditch, and don't know how it got there, but they found a big bag of money. There was a lot of money in that bag. They were so happy, they were so excited, and they began to talk about all the things they were going to do with this money, and because they'd been wanting this and wanting that and needing this and needing that. And so they said, well, we're just going to have to really come up with a good plan here. And so the plan was, two of them was going to take the money, and they were going to hide over here in the woods and figure out how they were going to do this without anyone else finding out that they've got the money. But they were hungry, so they sent a third one into town with some of the money to buy some food to bring back, because they knew this was going to take a while to figure this plan out. The one young man took some money and he went into town to buy him some food. The other two men began to talk about what all they could do with the money, what they wanted to do with the money. But then they began to talk about, but you know what? If this was split 2 ways instead of 3 ways, we could do so much more for ourselves. We could have so much more. So they came up with a brilliant plan. When the third guy comes back, we're going to kill him. And we're going to take his share. Then we'll have more for ourselves. The young man who went in to buy the groceries, he bought the food and was on his way back, and he got to thinking, wow, imagine what I could do if I had all of this money. So he went back and he bought some poison, and he poisoned the food, and he thought, I'll poison the other two guys, then I'll have all this to myself, because look what I can do if I have all of this just for me. So he went back to his buddies, and they said, it's about time you got here. We're about to starve. But before they could sit down and eat, his two buddies beat him to a pulp and killed him. Now there's only 2 to split the money. They thought, we have so much more we can do for ourselves now. Let's celebrate. Let's eat. Simple little story, but it's really the picture of life. We really don't know how to walk in gratitude till we start losing things. Have y'all noticed there's always going to be something to complain about? There always is. There's always going to be something to complain about. My wife and I we've joked a lot recently about the changes as you get older in life. And we understand we're still middle-aged. We're still young. We've got a teenager. How old can we be? And maybe some of you guys haven't noticed as you're getting a little bit older, but the human body just seems to have a mind of its own. The aches and the pains, we have decided we're going to stop trying to figure out what causes the aches and the pains, and we're just going to say it's because of too many birthdays. It's a picture of life at large. The aches, the pains in life, just the disappointments, the hurt feelings. Just people are always going to let you down in relationships and friendships and on your job. You're just never going to think that the boss is treating you right because you think the boss, he created that business just to provide for you. You forgot he created that business for himself, not for you. He was just nice enough to hire you or she. There's always going to be something wrong in life, but is there anybody in here that would argue the fact that every single day of our life, for everything that we can point on and say, this is wrong in my life, that there are dozens and dozens and dozens of things that are still perfectly in place, working quite well in our life, and we should be very grateful. Very grateful. I've just come here to remind you today, there are thinkers and there are takers. And it appears from this story that the ratio was not very attractive. 1 out of 10% came back and said, thank you. Thank you. And that's why I've shared with you through the years that when we're in worship in here and we're worshiping God, it's not about music. Yes, we sing because that is so natural for us to give praise through music, through singing and playing instruments. God has given us that means to be grateful. But no one should ever have to be a cheerleader here. No one should ever have to strong-arm you into giving thanks to God, to lift in holy hands in thanksgiving to the Lord. God is good. God is good. And He's not going to get any less good. His goodness is mind-blowing and overwhelming in our lives every single day. Can we see it? I've come to remind you today that if you are a thinker, if you are a grateful person, which means you're a giver in life, you usually put other people's needs above your own. It means that's the explanation for the ripple effect. That why you're more positive than other people. Why that you seemingly get raises and promotions on your job above other people. It explains why you have lots of friends. People want to be around you. People are very drawn to grateful people. It explains why when everybody else is seeing the glass half empty, you're seeing it half full. Why that you're so positive and you get so annoyed by negative people, minus-mouth people. You get very annoyed by them because you just can't understand how they can be that way. You're a thinker. And without you in society, I don't know what we would do. If you see yourself more in the taker category, that explains many things in your life. Why you're pessimistic, why you grumble a lot, why you don't have many friends, why you don't seem to get promotions and raises on your job when other people are. It may even explain your health, your mental condition, your psychological condition. It would probably explain many things. And as simple as it sounds, I'm here to remind you that if you can only adjust one thing in your life, if you could just adjust this, the ripple effect would eliminate 99% of the other things that you're pursuing in life that you know needs to change. Just this. I want you to stand with me this morning, and we're going to pray. But before we do that, because the only thing I know to pray for is, Holy Spirit, please help us to see this. But we just need to take a moment and just give some thanks. God is so good. I understand some people get older and they just get grouchy. I get that. There's many others of us that as we get older, we've never seen life more clearly. Our value system is getting purer by the day, and we're seeing the true picture of life clearer by the day. What matters, what doesn't matter, what's essential, what's non-essential. The truth when we look at our life of our endeavors and what we've put our hand to and our successes, and just understanding the big picture of that and just being grateful that, I know there are people out there that just really think that they're all that and they've got all these gifts and talents, and not only do they not think that they've earned everything they've got, they're never satisfied with that. They're always wanting more and more. But I'm telling you, if you look at the truth of your life, you will look at your life and everything in your life, and you will have to admit it's mostly by the grace of God. I'm telling you, it is grace, grace, grace. Eternal life is grace. Oh my goodness, if we didn't have that, would we even talk about anything else today? It just wouldn't matter. There is nothing I've done in my life that I have been talented enough, smart enough, pretty enough to where I can look and say, you know what, I earned that, I deserve that, because look at me. I see the reality that in the natural, I'm very unworthy. In the natural, I could never deserve for God to use me the way that He has used me in life. It is grace. I don't deserve my wife. I'm sure she could have done better than me. When I cried out to the Lord for years for a child, my child is beyond what I could ever receive back into my life as a payment for any good thing that I've done. She's way beyond that. Our home together, our life together, it's grace. It's grace. And if you can see that today, it will make you more grateful. And what makes you more grateful makes you more happy. What makes you more happy will ripple into your life, and it will give you a different view of life, a different perspective. You'll become more positive in life. Your life will begin to ripple into success areas that it never could go to before. Today, Lord, we remember to be grateful. I wouldn't even know where to begin, Lord, except I guess I do know where to begin, with you. The work of the cross, the cutting of a grace covenant, a world that we take for granted every single day, taking your love for granted, taking for granted, Lord, that we truly are just saved by the work of the cross with simple faith on our part. What a huge dividend for such simple faith. Lord, we all drove here today in cars. We walked into this building. We're listening to the sounds, to the voices. We're seeing each other. We're able to reach out our hands and touch each other. You've given us gifts and skills and abilities to serve today, to play music, to teach children, to just do an endless number of things, and to walk and to talk, to have functions in our body, Lord, to breathe, to process the things that our bodies have to process, to have minds that are functional today, Lord. It's exhaustive, Lord, the things that we should be grateful for today. So we stop and we give thanks, and we're grateful. We're very, very grateful. Father, help us today, not just through this week of Thanksgiving, but the days to come, to start looking at each other, whether it be our spouse or our children or our friends, the people we go to church with. Help us, Lord, to see the truth of their value in our lives and stop complaining and be so grateful for each other. So let me tell you how life can work as it changes and you think you don't have anything to be grateful for. You know my single biggest complaint the last couple years of my life? My single biggest complaint is because I haven't been able to do some of the things that I used to do every day without ever having to think about it. I just took it for granted. It's all linked to my lower back, and I'm fine as long as I don't lift stuff. The trouble is I'm my father's son, and we were born and bred to lift things and to do work and to not need anybody else for anything because we'll figure out how to do it by ourselves. We're happier that way. It's just the way we were tooled. And then suddenly the last couple of years I find myself in a situation where there's even some things that I thought was quite simple that I can't do. Like I can't put together a 12-foot Christmas tree and lift it up on the ladder and drop it down there anymore. Well, I can, but I won't be walking for the next 3 days. A lot of things around this building, this property that I can't do anymore that I used to do and enjoyed doing. And I've complained a lot about it. But I'm learning to be grateful because of things that I used to do that I can no longer do. Guess who's willing to do those things now? You can say me if you want. And so for all of those volunteers that my wife is informing that they are volunteers this morning, that's getting ready to carry all the stuff out of the front lobby, go upstairs in the attic and carry down endless tonnage of Christmas stuff to transition this church this week and put up 3 12-foot Christmas trees that I will gladly help decorate. I can still lift bulbs. I enjoy that part. For all that stuff that I did for many, 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 many years, never having to ask anybody for anything because I enjoyed doing it. And now I can't do it, and you're more than happy, thrilled, exhilarated. It's changing your world. It's filling you with so much joy. I just want to say thank you. Thank you. There's nothing going on here Wednesday night. I'll see y'all next Sunday.